Terumah Perek Yud Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. The first Mishnah and the last chapter of Terumot, chapter 11. Okay, our Mishnah is going to discuss the idea that you're allowed to use Terumah, you're allowed to eat it. The Kohen, of course, is allowed to eat it, he's allowed to drink it, he's allowed to anoint himself with it in the ways that we're going to see, the ways that they're normally used, and we saw this also in the Mishnah and Shvi'it. But what you're not allowed to do is use Terumah in a way that causes the Terumah to be wasted, as we'll see in the coming Mishnah. It says the Mishnah, Ein notnim dveila ugrogor. Remember, dveila is the packed cake. It's the cake of figs that they use. They dried them out and they would pack them together. That's how they would make it last. That's how they would preserve it. Grogor are dried figs. You can't put them letocha murias. Murias, says the Bartanura, shuman shel dagim. Let's look at the Jastro for a second. Brine, pickle containing fish hash and sometimes wine. So they would make, if you've ever had pickled herring. So actually, the pickled herring in America and Israel are very different. In America, it's much sweeter. So it's a combination of vinegar and salt, and then they put in a ton of sugar. So they didn't have sugar, so they would put in some sweeteners because they wanted to fish. Also, their fish was very fishy, and they would take up some of the fishiness. Okay, so therefore they would put in fruit. The problem is, what happens? You can't put these dried figs, in the murias in the fish brine. Because you're going to throw them away. What would you do? Says the Bartanura. These figs that were put in the murias in the fish brine, the sachatam, you would then, when you were done, you would take them out, you would squeeze them out, then you would throw them away. They had a function in the recipe. It's kind of like a bay leaf. When you stick a bay leaf in the soup, you don't eat the bay leaf. You take it out afterwards, you throw it away. It just adds the taste. And that's exactly what they would do for these figs and the fish brine. It took away some of the fishiness, some of the stench. That was its job. And that's fine for regular food. But in Terumah, then you're using the fish or the bay leaf or the whatever, but you're throwing away the food. That's ibud, that's la'abed Terumah, and you're not allowed to do that. But if you have Terumah wine, I can put Terumah wine into this murias. Why? Because then it becomes part of the brine that's going to be consumed. We'll look at the Bartanura. Regila ayula take yayin the murias. Shelo ayabo shamnunit. So it wouldn't be as shamnunit as fat. The matko, it would sweeten it. Take botam to give it taste. Hilkach, therefore, mutar litain yayin shel truma letocha. I can put truma wine if I'm a kohen in my fish brine. Velo amrina liavure zu amal bilvan. We don't say that the wine is there just to remove the stench. Rather, because it's part of the taste. That you're going to eat it. It's going to be part of the food. So the Mishnah continues. Ein mipatmin et hashemen aval ozin et hayayin yen mlin. So yenum lin. Okay, you can't lepatem et hashemen. If I have truma oil, I cannot then. Truma oil has a lot of different uses. I can use it to cook, and I can use it. I'm not supposed to burn it, so I'm allowed to. I can anoint myself with it. But then sometimes they would add spices to the shemen. And once I add spices to the shemen, so there's one of two problems. Bartanura brings two. One is bol'in et hashemen va'azali ibud. Because then what happens is, again, remember, I stick the spices in, and at whatever point, when I'm done with the spices, so I'm throwing away the spices, or at the bottom, there's going to be spices left, and then the wine, the oil, the truma oil at the bottom of the dregs of the bottle is going to go to waste. So therefore, I'm wasting truma. Inami, the other reason, then the oil becomes an anointing oil. It doesn't become an eating oil. So if either way, the Mishnah says, Ein repatim min hashemen, aval olasina tayayin yen mulin, yen numlin. That's a hard word. Yen mulin. Okay, you can make wine into yen mulin. I.e., yen mulin is, I guess, spiced wine. You can add wine, spice to the wine because you're going to drink the wine. You're going to, I guess, eat the spices. It's going to be part of the wine itself. Ein mevashli yayin shel truma nu halacha. You're not allowed to cook truma wine, mibnei shumam ito, because when you cook it, it condenses and some of it disperses, some of it evaporates, so therefore you're not allowed to do it. Rabbi Yehuda matir mibnei shum mashbicho. Rabbi Yehuda says you can because it's mashbiach. It makes it more valuable. So that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. We don't pass them like Rabbi Yehuda. The Kahati quotes, "What in the world? How can you say that?" Remember, we talked about yayin mevushal versus eino mevushal. We've had this discussion before. We even had a Mishnah that said, Perek Bet Mishnah Vav. Let's see if we can find that Mishnah. It says Mishnah Perek Bet Mishnah Vav. Oop, that's Mishnah Gimel. 1 second. Perek Bet Mishnah Vav. Okay, the Mishnah said, Yayin, you can't be Toreim, Yayin she'eino mevushal al mevushal. V'la mevushal she'eino mevushal. because we said that's a ra al hatov and tov al hara, i.e., yayin mevushal is much better than yayin. Let's see if I can find where sorry. Let's see, I can go back to where I was. I was in Yud Aleph. Okay. How can you say, so Rabbi Yehuda, how can you say that yayin, the cooking wine, makes it better? Anybody knows that cooking wine makes it worse than because it's no longer valuable. If you ask a sommelier, I once heard a talk about this. He says that once you cook wine, plain wine is alive. It's a living thing. It has, everybody knows that it continues to grow and develop. That's why the 2004 Merlot is a different wine than the 2005 Merlot. And even 2004 bottles can be different because they develop in different ways. It's alive. Once you cook the wine, you kill all the bacteria in the wine and then become static. It is what it is. So always, almost always, yayin mevushal is cheaper than yayin she'ena mevushal. So how could Rabbi Yehuda say, so he says, the Yerushalmi says that for the Kohen it's worth more. Why? Because for vis-a-vis us, I cannot take truma and give it to the Kohen. But sometimes the Kohen wanted to cook it. Why? Because the Kohen is allowed, the Rabbi Yehuda says he can cook it because it lasted longer. I guess once the bacteria was there, I don't know exactly, Rabbi Yehuda felt that it was better for him. It would last longer, he would keep better. Once you kill the bacteria in it, you don't have to worry about it turning into vinegar. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said you could cook it because for him, it's better. But vis-a-vis normal halacha, yayin akum, stam yenam, etc., yayin she'eno mevushal is considered far more significant, and therefore you can't. And that's also why you can't take truma from yayin mevushal for wine that's eno mevushal. We'll stop here. As always, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to contact me at ourspolter@gmail.com, and we'll dedicate the learning to the memory of my father, Rav Simcha ben Yitzchak Kalman. Have a good day.